Hello everyone. I would like today to take the information that I normally present when I talk about RevitaBlū and the YES system, but present it in a different angle. What I mean here is that Jeunesse has been created at its origin. It's based on stem cells. It's based on Lumines, which is a product that supports stem cells in the skin. Stem cells are everywhere in the genesis of Jeunesse. Then Jeunesse started to go into different directions with a broad variety of products. And the message that I believe is oftentimes lost or not really put forth, which to me is impressive, is that while other products were being developed, many of these products go back to the source and support various aspects of stem cell function in the body. So I would like to talk about some of the products here in the Jeunesse product line under this umbrella of stem cell function. Because when we talk about stem cells, and we won't have the time to go in this research, but I think it's interesting. When we look at, for example, the effect of things that we know are good for health, exercise, antioxidants, a diet full of vegetables and colored vegetables that are bringing all these pigments that we find in vegetables, good sleep, all of these things, we know that it's good for health. Well, if we look at stem cells, we see that they all support stem cell function. If you look at things that we know are not good, for example, stress, we know that stress is the source or has been associated at least to the development of many different kinds of health problems. Smoking, cigarette smoking, we know is not good for health. Alcohol, we know is not very good for health. Long-term consumption of alcohol. Well, these three elements studied on stem cells, they suppress the ability of stem cells to do their job properly in the body. We know fasting is good for health for many reasons, but we have discovered that one thing that fasting does is that it triggers the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. So more we do research on positive aspects of our lifestyles, aspects of our lifestyle that leads to benefits, or aspects of our lifestyles that do not lead to benefits, that are detrimental to health, we discover that they both have either a positive effect on stem cells or a negative effect on stem cells. So it's really pointing to something that I have seen for a number of years that I find fascinating. Stem cells really appear to be at the core of human health. It does not eliminate other things that we know about health. Antioxidants are good not just because of their effect on stem cells. Fasting, eating vegetables, it's not just about stem cells, but at the same time, they're all having an effect on stem cells. So stem cells seems to be this core of human health. So I would like to dive into this aspect of human health and see how the different products in the Jeunesse product line all support in one way or another stem cell function in the body. So first, what about stem cells? Stem cells, you have all heard about stem cells in the media. The reason why there's such an interest in stem cells is because there's a general recognition of their enormous regenerative power. For that reason, stem cells not only are studied worldwide, but they're considered to be the future of medicine. In my view, it's the future of medicine available today. But if you go right now in the library of the NIH and you just do a search with stem cells, you will see almost 400,000 studies that have been published. Probably half of those is over the past 5 years. It is one of the most prolific field of medical research. So it is something that is really worth talking about and understanding at least its general effect and its general importance in health. So let's first talk about what are stem cells in the body. Stem cells are your repair system, meaning that any time in your life when something was broken or not working properly in your body, it is the role of your stem cells to go in that area and repair the tissue. I call it the repair system because just like your immune system, I can compare it to other systems, but probably the one that it compares the best with is your immune system. Your immune system is a specific tissue called lymphoid tissue, like your thymus gland, lymph nodes, Peyer's patch in the gut. I won't go into too many details, but they're called lymphoid tissues. They contain specific types of immune cells, B cells, T cells, macrophages, and these cells together have an activity that is very, very, very closely coordinated to basically attract immune cells to a site of an infection, stimulate immune cells to kill the invader, which is either a bacteria or a virus. So this is your immune system. Tissues, specific cells, coordinated in a specific way for one specific action that is going to maintain the health of the overall organism. So what do we have with stem cells? We have the bone marrow, a specific tissue that releases a specific cell, your stem cells, that will go through a very coordinated process. These stem cells will migrate to a site of an injury or to a site where there's damage to a tissue, and stem cells will then participate in the process of tissue repair, allowing that tissue to resume its integrity, to basically function normally in order to support the health of the overall organism. And so in that way, it is truly a new system of the body. So I call it the repair system or the renewal system. In all of these functions that stem cells are playing in the body, the most important one is the number of stem cells in circulation. I'll come back to that through a few examples, but essentially more stem cells in circulation means that more stem cells are available to participate to the process of tissue repair. So in this process of tissue repair, stem cells play essentially two roles, and I will look at them separately. The first is tissue repair. The other one is tissue renewal, meaning repair. You repair what's broken, but the whole field of stem cell research has discovered along the way that even when there's nothing is broken, stem cells play another role in the background to a lesser extent. It's more like a silent work, if you want. You don't really see it. It's that stem cells replace the cells that are being lost. Every day we lose cells. Every day we need to replace the cells that are being lost if we want to maintain our health. So that is tissue renewal. So I will look at them separately. Let's start with tissue repair. So the first proposal in the scientific literature that stem cells actually constitute the repair system of the body, this is something that was proposed in the scientific literature in 2001. So 20 years later now, many studies, I mean literally hundreds if not thousands of studies have been published documenting various aspects of this whole process. I will skip all the data and I will summarize this in this animation here that really describes what stem cells do in the body. Anytime there is an injury, here symbolized by an injury to the heart, but it could be a bone fracture, burn to the skin, whatever, an injury to a tissue, the affected tissue will release compounds that are very well known, like granulocyte colony stimulating factor, interleukin 8, stem cell factor. These compounds will go to the bone marrow and will trigger the release of stem cells from the bone marrow in such a manner that 3 to 5 days after an injury, the number of stem cells in circulation will increase 3 to 10 times. Now, these stem cells are circulating everywhere in the body. They don't know where to go. They don't know when they are released. What is the tissue that is in need of repair? So starting on the second day after an injury, the affected tissue will release another compound, SDF1, stromal-derived factor 1. That compound is released locally. When it diffuses to the local capillaries, the local blood vessels, and stem cells are circulating in these fine blood vessels, upon contact with SDF1, with the stem cells, it triggers their migration out of the blood into the tissue, and upon contact with cellular debris of that tissue, stem cells will multiply and then will start to transform into cells of that tissue, literally repairing that tissue. This is your repair system. This process is taking place every single time in your life when you have had an injury of any kind or anything in your body was not functioning properly. So in this whole process, so you've got the release of stem cells, which means an increase in the number of circulating stem cells, their circulation, their migration into the tissue, proliferation, and conversion, transformation in cells of that tissue. Again, as I said before, of all these steps, the one that has been the most studied is the release of stem cells from the bone marrow, and the consequence of which is an increase in the number of circulating stem cells. So many studies have looked at the link between the number of stem cells in circulation and repair. So the first conclusion is that if you have more stem cells in circulation, if we don't do anything, you just have more stem cells in circulation, you will repair better. So you take two people with the same broken bone, you have certainly noticed that we don't all repair with the same speed, we don't all recover with the same speed and same efficiency. The main factor here, the determining factor, is that people who repair better have more stem cells in circulation. Here's one such study that shows or illustrate this process. I'm going to use various studies through this presentation, and understand here, I could show you many different studies. I'm only using them not to make the presentation complicated. I'm trying to simplify it as much as possible. It is just to illustrate the idea that I want to show you where these conclusions are coming from. It is coming from real data, real science, real studies that have been published. Here is a study in which people showed up at the hospital after a stroke. Doctors quantified the number of stem cells in circulation and then basically just followed these patients over a number of weeks, and a few weeks later separated these people in two groups. First group to the left, people who had a good outcome, meaning they recovered a relatively normal life, productive life. They just basically went back to their life. The other group are people who did not recover well, either passed away or went to a physical therapy center to try to either learn to work with their disability or to try to improve their condition. And if we look at between these two groups, the one thing that is clear is that people with poor outcome had about half the number of stem cells compared to people who had a good outcome. So it is an illustration that if you have fewer stem cells in circulation, you do not repair as well. So it really begs the question. One thing here that is important to mention. You have all seen when you do a blood test that you have a certain number of red blood cells, and then the lab report will tell you whether you are in a normal range or you are below or higher than the normal range. So all these different types of cells have a range. If you look at the range is oftentimes not very wide between being too low or being too high. With stem cells here, these values have not been determined yet. We don't know what is an average number of stem cells. I can tell you from the work that we have done and what we find in the scientific literature, we have quantified in people's blood levels as low as 0.05 stem cells per microliter and as high as 5 stem cells per microliter. So you can see here a range of up to 100-fold. The range can be very vast. We have seen about 2.5 stem cells per microliter as an average. But you can see here the wide range in population. So what I'm saying here is that people who are at the lower end of that range are the people who will not repair as well as people who are in the upper range of the number of stem cells. So now that we have established that people with fewer stem cells don't repair as well, it begs the question, in anybody who have an injury or the people that have fewer stem cells in circulation, if we have a means of putting more stem cells in circulation, can we enhance the ability of the body to repair? The answer is yes. And let me show you these studies. I could have chosen here many studies touching various aspects of human health or various tissues in the body. And I want to be clear here. I am not saying that any one of the Jeunesse product will do what we're describing here. All I'm trying to show you here is I'm taking studies from the scientific literature to illustrate those concepts about how your body works. Unfortunately, very few studies in the scientific literature study health. They all study diseases. So we have to use these studies to understand how the body works to maintain its own health, or if we want to optimize our health. So I'm using these studies to illustrate a phenomenon in the body. I do not want to say here that any of the Jeunesse products will support or help get rid of these problems in the body. So here's an example with regard to the heart. It is just an example, an illustration. I could have used studies touching the lung, the pancreas, the brain, the skin, the bones, many different aspects of human health. Here is with the heart. It is a study that has been done, and I chose it too because it's a study that comes from the National Institute of Health. So it is a very credible study in which scientists stop the blood flow to the heart through a knot that they do to the coronary artery. It triggers a heart attack. Then they let the animal recover. They separate the animals in two groups. One group was a control group. The other group was the group in which they triggered stem cell mobilization, which means the release of the animal's own stem cells during 8 to 10 days. So the only difference between the two groups, the experimental group that had stem cell mobilization just had more stem cells, substantially more stem cells in circulation during 8 to 10 days. When they looked at the animals about a month later in the control group, we can see severe scar tissue in the ventricular wall, no new blood vessels, 17% survival, and poor cardiovascular health. Now pay attention here to the difference with the heart. In the experimental group, you can see a renewal of the ventricular wall, new functional blood vessels connecting to the other ventricule, 73% survival versus 17, and almost normalized cardiovascular function. So in a world where nothing can be done to help recover from a heart attack, here's a study showing how the heart can recover if you have more stem cells in circulation, substantially more stem cells in circulation. What was used here in that test, in that study, is something that actually unrelated to stem cells, because of the effect that these drugs use trigger platelet aggregation. It is a treatment that cannot be used in humans. But it is a study that shows one very important phenomenon here, is that if you can put more stem cells in circulation, the body has the ability, the biology, to use these stem cells for tissue repair. So again, I can show you similar study touching other tissues. All I wanted to illustrate here is the ability of the body to use stem cells. If you can put more in circulation, indeed, you can help tissue repair. The third conclusion is about tissue renewal. So while stem cells constitute your repair system, meaning that they repair what's broken, something else has emerged in stem cell research, basically showing that stem cells play a crucial role even when nothing is broken and there's nothing to repair. And it is the fact that every day of our lives we lose cells. It is a normal process of human life, the process of life. So in order to stay healthy, we need to replace the cells that are being lost. And it is the role of stem cells to go and replace the cells that are being lost and to maintain the health of all the various tissues of the body. So traditionally, the understanding of health and aging is that we reach, I'm simplifying here, but we reach, let's say, optimal health around 25 years old, and then after that it's a slow decline, and as we age we develop problems as part of this slow decline. But stem cell research is telling us that actually aging and developing health problems is linked to another phenomenon, and it's the fact that every day of our life we lose cells. We need to replace cells that are being lost. It's a little bit like your bank account. As long as your income can compensate for your expenses, then you are fine. But the day that your income declines and can no longer compensate for your expenses, that's when you start to accumulate a deficit. You're not bankrupt yet. Bankruptcy will be down the road, but you're starting to develop a deficit. It's the same thing with your stem cells. As long as you have enough stem cells in circulation, then you can replace the cells that are being lost. But when the number of stem cells decline in your blood, there's a point in your life when you no longer have enough stem cells to fully compensate for cellular loss. When is this happening? This is a big surprise in what we're discovering, is that very early in our lives, probably somewhere between 20 and 30 years old, we have lost about 90% of our red marrow that makes stem cells, and it's been converted into yellow marrow or fatty marrow that does not make stem cells. This is a normal process, so there's nothing you can really do for this. It really depends on how many stem cells you started with. If we actually look at the number of stem cells, what it means in terms of number of stem cells, you have lost more than 90% of your original stem cells when you reach about 30 years of age. So somewhere in that time frame, between 30 to 40, probably closer to 30, you start to no longer have enough stem cells to compensate for cellular loss. And as we all know very well, that's about the time when we start to experience that we do not repair as well as before. You know, when we were kids, 5, 10, even teenagers, you have an injury, you repair super fast. But past 30 years old, we start to realize we don't repair as well as before. You have athletes, professional athletes, whose careers sometimes when they get into their 30s, they're considered to be seniors, like old people in their sports. It's not because they cannot perform. It's just because when they have an injury, they can no longer repair like they used to. And that's what is happening. It's because there's a decline, age-related decline in the number of circulating stem cells. So the problem is not going to show up right away. It's going to show up 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And it will accumulate in a place in your body where is the weakness in your life. It due either to lifestyle, to genetic factors, to old injuries, exposure to environmental factors, environmental toxins, various factors are going to determine what is the weakness in your physiology. And that's where the problem is likely to develop. So all this concept was presented into an article that I published in 2013, basically explaining how this decline, natural decline in the number of circulating stem cells is actually the reason why we develop health problems or we lose our health as we age. So, and in this paper, I was suggesting that one way to document if this is true, one way to determine if this is true would be simply to go and count the number of stem cells in the bloodstream of people who have developed various kinds of age-related problems and compare that with the number of stem cells in a healthy person of the same age. But by now, many of these studies have been done, so we can look at some of them. Don't look at diseases here. Again, in science, in medical science, we study diseases. We don't study health. So the only way to study the link between the number of stem cells in circulation and our ability to stay healthy is to study what happens when you don't stay healthy. But at the end, the conclusion is really all about health. It is not about disease formation. So when we go now and look at the number of stem cells in people who are at different stages of the development of diabetes, we see a straight line. As people advance in the problem, they have fewer and fewer stem cells. If we looked at kidney function, people with normal kidney function to the left, and people who are at different phases of the development of kidney problems, significant, serious kidney problems, we can see that not only they have fewer stem cells, but as they advance in the development of kidney problem, they have fewer and fewer stem cells. If you take all these people and do a graph between number of stem cells and kidney function, we can see a direct relationship. Fewer stem cells in circulation means lower kidney function. We have a similar relationship here with erectile function. To the right, people who have complained of poor erectile function, and to the left, control individuals. If we look at the average number of stem cells in circulation, we can see that people who complained of poor erectile function have on average about half the number of stem cells compared to healthy people. If you take all these individuals and you determine the International Index of Erectile Function, and you make a graph between erectile function and number of stem cells, again, you see a straight line. There's a direct line between erectile function and vascular health. So what is the main parameter for vascular health? Because there's also a link between stem cells and vascular health. And if you look at people who have developed high blood pressure, they have on average about half the number of stem cells compared to healthy people. The same thing here with problems of the digestive system. Same thing with problems with the brain. Same thing with problems with the lung. Same thing with joint problem. So there are many, many more studies like these. I just took a few to illustrate the only conclusion from this. Now, forget all the diseases. That's not what's relevant. What is really relevant to understand is that if you happen to have fewer stem cells in circulation and past age 30, we all at some point fall in that class, then you start to lose your health because of that deficit in cellular loss that is slowly accumulating in your body. And the only way to offset that cellular loss is simply to put more stem cells in circulation to enhance this absolutely natural ability to renew and maintain tissues. So the conclusion here is that more stem cells in circulation and better stem cell function means that you are more capable to support tissue repair and tissue renewal, which in turn is going to help the body reach and maintain optimal health. So now let's look at Genesis product. So the first one that has been, and the only one aside from Luminous, that has been developed specifically to have an effect on stem cells is RevitaBlū. What is RevitaBlū? Very simply, it is a blend of ingredients. I'm referring here to the blue-green algae, sea buckthorn berry extract, and aloe vera extract that have been documented in the scientific literature to support the release of stem cells from the bone marrow, simply optimizing the number of stem cells in circulation. So all you do here, nothing dramatic. Every day that you take RevitaBlū, you simply help support the number of stem cells in circulation, and your body is designed naturally. This is your body. That's how it works. It will use these stem cells to help repair and support optimal health. The product doesn't do a whole lot in your body, just support the release of stem cells. It's your stem cells that are doing everything in terms of tissue repair and helping to support optimal health. Another key ingredient that supports stem cell function, it was not developed for this, but it's reserve. How does reserve support stem cell function? In two main ways. Number one, when stem cells are released from the bone marrow and they are in the circulation, there are a few things that can reduce their ability to identify what are the tissues that are in need of repair and to be able to migrate in these tissues. One of them is systemic oxidative stress. So if you can take antioxidants that are going to reduce oxidative stress, you will support the ability of stem cells to do their job of repair in the body. It's really that simple. So one of the things that Reserve does is that it contains a broad family of polyphenols coming from berry extracts, and one in specific, resveratrol, that are going to reduce systemic oxidative stress, free radicals, and you're going indirectly to support stem cell function in the body. Now, as you release stem cells, they leave the bone marrow, they go into tissue. Resveratrol has been documented to help stem cells proliferate and differentiate in some tissues, and also proliferate in the bone marrow. It is also supporting DNA duplication in cells. When one stem cell gets into a tissue, its future is to multiply through up to 50 generations. There is a massive process of cellular division in your tissues to support the process of tissue repair. So anything you can do to support DNA duplication is also going to support the general role of stem cells in the body. So it's in that way that Reserve can support the role of stem cells in the body. Lumines. Lumines contains APT200, which is a group of peptides that have all been derived initially from stem cells, so therefore they help support the function of stem cells in the body, or I should say in the skin. To understand here the power of Lumines with APT200, we need to understand that the skin, first, it's the largest organ of the body, but it renews almost one of the tissues that renews the fastest. Every month or so, you have a new skin. So think of the amount of stem cells used to be able to maintain this renewal of the skin. Your skin has its own stem cells, epidermal stem cells. Where do they come from? Obviously, they come from the bone marrow. They all come from the bone marrow at the origin. So they leave the bone marrow, go into the blood, migrate into the skin, form that layer of skin stem cells that support this renewal process of the skin. But once they are in the skin, stem cells are no longer immortal. So over time, these stem cells are depleted. Actually, they're never depleted simply because they're constantly replenished by stem cells coming from the bone marrow. So basically what APT200 does through Lumines is to deposit some of these peptides in the skin that will coordinate and support migration of stem cells from the blood to the skin, proliferation of stem cells, whatever stem cells are doing in the skin, knowing that they are the renewal system of the skin. So I hope that this was not too complicated and that you enjoyed. Thank you very much.